This is Kerry Cassidy from Project Camelot, and I am here with Dolores Cannon. I'm very pleased to introduce our audience to Dolores Cannon and her work.
Okay.
I have been studying your work for quite some time, read several of your books, and I'm very impressed with your diligence, with the care you take with each and every person that you regress. And I just really want to welcome you here, and thank you very much for taking the time.
Thanks for asking me to do this.
Sure. So what I'd like you to do is maybe talk a little bit about how you got started doing what you're doing, and then I'd like to launch into, as we mentioned, what you call the three waves who have come here at this time to help the planet.
Okay. Well, I am a hypnotherapist. And as that, I'm a counselor, and I do a lot of therapy with people. But I began in hypnosis over 40 years ago. And I was doing it when there was no New Age, nobody knew about reincarnation. There were no such things as past lives. Nobody knew anything about it. So I guess I was setting the stage way back then. And I got into it totally by accident. I was doing hypnosis just for habit, stop smoking, lose weight. Nobody else knew of any other way to do it. When we got into reincarnation by accident. And of course there were no books out to tell you what to do or what to expect. So from the beginning, my curiosity has just said, I want to know more. I could have stopped because it was kind of very unexpected. But instead I kept exploring and exploring. And my first book that was written back then was about my beginnings. And I couldn't get it published because nobody knew anything about it. It was way ahead of its time. So now it's come out.
So what was that book? What was the title?
It's 5 Lives Remembered.
Okay.
And it was the story of how we began. And in the beginning, I tried to get it published, but there were no New Age publishers. There were no New Age bookstores. And the publishers said, we don't understand it. We don't know anything about it. So I had to put it to the side. But then as I continued my work, and I began doing past life regressions and past life therapy intensely 30 years ago. So that's what I've been doing ever since. And during that time, I began to get more information. And that's when my books began to be published then. But it took many, many years for the rest of the world, I guess, to catch up with what I had already found 40 years ago.
So at some point you started to get remembrant people going not just back to past lives, but also talking about coming into the planet from other solar systems,
Yes.
other experiences as ETs.
As I said, 30 years I've been doing the past life regressions. Then 25 years ago, they asked me to become a UFO investigator. Because in Arkansas, where I live, there was nobody who could explore this. There again, it was all new.
When you say
The
they,
investigators. MUFON in those days, where they were saying they needed somebody because they were getting people who thought they had had abductions, but they didn't know who to work with. And they brought in psychologists, and they would put the person into trance, get them on board a craft, and then they would say, I don't know what to do, and they would wake the person up and jerk them out of the scene. That's not therapy. Because they're getting into something, but they say, I don't know what to do with this. It's not in the book, so I don't know what questions to ask. So they called me and said, would I be willing to work with it? Because they said, you've been in the bazaar for so long, it shouldn't frighten you. Because I was into the past life regressions, and I was used to the strange and the unusual. But they said it shouldn't frighten you, and I said, no, because I'm just too curious. So they wanted me to come to a meeting of 25 different investigators. It was a state meeting. And they were going to bring a woman from Oklahoma who thought she had had an experience. And they wanted me to put her under in front of all of them and ask questions. Not the best atmosphere. It's a goldfish bowl atmosphere. We didn't know her. She didn't know us. And so they wanted me to see if we could find out anything about it. And I had never done this kind of work before. But all along, I've had to write my own rules and regulations in all of hypnosis without anybody telling me what to do. In my technique, you go back to a past life. So here I had to adapt it to stay in this lifetime. But it worked. And they didn't know I hadn't done it before. And we took her on board the craft, and we got a great deal of information.
Mm-hmm.
After that, they just kept sending me cases. And then, well, I didn't like the way the MUFON was doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Is it okay to say this? Or?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. What I didn't like, they are so much into the nuts and bolts, the
Mm-hmm.
scientific.
Right.
They want to have something they can touch, feel, dissect, tear apart, or it doesn't exist. When
Right.
it comes to hypnosis, they don't understand it. And so when I was having sessions, and some of these investigators were present, they began making fun of a client while they're in trance
Oh, wow.
and making snide remarks and things. And I said, I can't have that. I will not subject anyone I worked with to that.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought they were not serious about what I was doing. So I decided then I'm not going to work with them anymore. Now there's a new director. I think they are more open now, but this was 25 years ago.
Sure, and I think that there was a resistance within the UFO sort of movement for many, many years that's only started to sort of defrost, I would say, even in the last 5 years, to where they're more interested in hearing about the occupants of the craft rather than the craft and how it flies.
Yeah, because
right?
they wanted to know, for instance, we were having the session, they wanted to know what kind of fuel to get the craft from here to there, how many miles an hour, what makes the engines move, and it's not done that way.
Right.
They're propelled by thought. There are crystal powers on board the craft, but it is mostly done by thought.
Sure.
And by the group thought of everyone on the craft can do this. And they don't go from this planet to the next planet out there. They go through dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they couldn't understand this. And they just thought, oh, this is a bunch of, crap. And so they were making fun of what I was doing. And so I wasn't going to do that. But I had one man, Louis Farish, if you know him. Lou Farish is the one who puts on the UFO conference in Eureka Springs.
I see.
That's been going on for 22 years. And he was like my confidant all the way through. You have to have someone you can talk to and bounce ideas off of. And he was always open. So I shared everything I found with him. I didn't share with MUFON anymore. And I began to go way beyond what they had found and what they were interested in.
So let's fast forward a bit, because you're now writing these books called The Convoluted Universe.
Yes.
And what you began to find with your clients was that things didn't follow a linear sort of pattern. Isn't that right?
Take a drink here. As in the beginning, it was just taking them on board the craft. My book that I've written about this, my 25 years, is called The Custodians. Because all through my work, I've not seen any negativity. It's always been positive. This is the way I see them, as the custodians of our planets. The first book I wrote on it was The Keepers of the Garden. We are the garden, and they are the gardeners. And I've never found negativity, because I could see why they were doing what they were doing and the reasons for the whole thing.
Okay, and when you say they, who are you talking about?
The ETs.
Okay, and I have you, but different descriptions of different groups, because you're
There are
coming
many,
across.
many, many. But this is what people find strange. I guess your audience will accept it. As I began doing the normal, UFO abduction scenes where they're on board the craft and everything, and they're always full of all this fear and all of that. See, I work in the deepest possible level of trance, which is called the somnambulistic level. Most of the other investigators and the hypnotists work at the light levels. At the light levels, you still have the fear and emotion involved with the experience. But in my method, we take the conscious mind out of the picture altogether. We get into the deep level, and you can find the real answers. And when we're at that level, they don't experience emotion and pain or anything. And this is when things began to get strange, because while I'm talking to the person and I get them into the deep level, they might be crying, they don't know what's going on. Then all of a sudden they calm down and we're able to talk. Then the other voices began to come through. And the first time, the little mechanical voice came in and said, "We are scanning." And it's like, okay, what's going on here? And you could feel a vibration through your body. And then they said, all right, she's the one we're supposed to tell. And they said, why give the information to just anyone? Give it to somebody who will use it. Mm-hmm. And then they said, what do you want to know? You don't ask me, what do you want to know? Because I want to know everything.
Sure.
And so I began asking the questions, and it was ETs on board the craft. While they were working on the person, would be answering my questions. I wanted to know what they were doing, why were they doing it. Then I wanted to know about them. I wanted to know about their life. Did they live on the craft, what it was like on the planets they lived on. I wanted to find out about how the ship was powered. I wanted to know everything. How do they eat? How do they procreate?
So you were talking to which groups?